Please give a warm welcome to Writer Will Tracy. Excellent. You braved the weather and the mudslides and to make it here.
I know. I think they figured that, in the course of making a movie and releasing a movie, the studio figured, if you lose a writer or two, if they're willing to take that chance. Maybe not with the stars, the director, but writers are expendable to a certain extent, I think.
You're necessary, in particular this script. I was blown away when I first saw the film, the structure of the script that you built. It's basically three major conversations that happen. And then each conversation just keeps upping the ante. And it instead of violence, each conversation just builds up the tension.
Yeah,
on the propulsive. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, it's a bit of a sleight of hand because really I'm fooling people into thinking it's a thriller when really it's basically a couple people chatting in a room. It's most of the movie is a series of these conversations. But you're right. Yeah, that first. I did structure around especially those kind of what I think of as the big three kind of conversations in the film. The first being when she kind of comes to her senses and then she says, "Okay, here's what's going to happen," and he resists it, right? And he says, "No, you are an alien, and you will confess. They always do." And then the second conversation being that kind of she's had some time to get her bearings, and she says, "I figured you out. You're in an echo chamber." And he's prepared for that as well.
Yes.
And then that third conversation being they've kind of now reached this sort of new level together where they're kind of operating, ostensibly in good faith as equals, right? Having a civil, good faith conversation over dinner, which of course breaks down. And it's just I just thought of that as kind of the way that we could escalate the stakes of that conversation so that it's not just, otherwise we have a movie where someone's saying, "You're an alien, no I'm not," for 2 hours, and that's not especially interesting.
But based on what you just told us, did you understand that the tension and the stress that it builds into the audience, it supersedes violence?
Yeah, that's right.
The average script
takes the place of violence, or feels like violence in some way, yeah. And there is some actual physical violence in the film. Most of it is compressed in a kind of, in terms of screen time, a small portion of the film. And yet it feels, you're right, in some ways it does feel at least maybe if emotionally violent in some way throughout. Yeah, I know what you mean.
I have seen the film a few times, and every time I watch it, it's a completely different experience.
Oh,
and
good.
When you were writing, did you understand that like the multiple viewing aspect? Because it is. I mean, you guys just saw the film and you saw all the reveals, etc. It plays completely different once you know.
Yeah, I was very worried about because it is a movie. Maybe the first thing I've written that has, I don't know if you call it a twist, but certainly a series of big surprises in the third act that the movie leads up to. And so my big worry is that the movie would feel like, a wind-up toy that does its one surprise, and once it's done its surprise, there's no need to see the movie again. I was very worried about that. And so, I tried to make, I guess, trying to make the conversations in the film rich enough, and I guess the emotional reality of the characters rich enough that if you see it a second time and a third time, it rewards you by revealing new things to you, and even tonally revealing new things. And the actors felt, certainly Yorgos, and then the actors felt the same way. Emma has said on many occasions that it was the first time as an actress that she had to think about what the viewer would think on the second viewing of the film, which usually as an actor, you're not thinking about that. You're just thinking about that initial kind of visceral experience. And so when she's having to juggle, okay, I'm going to have these little nuances that I think I'm going to do this nuance for the people who are watching the movie the second time.
So
as
she
a-
actually.
yes, as an actor, just imagine having to juggle that from take to take. It's quite I mean, she's very good.
Because
it turns out.
when I was watching the film the second time, I was noticing like
Yeah.
tweaks and
That's
things
right.
like almost like blinking to us.
That's
going
right.
like,
Yeah. The little nuances in the performance that both performances, all performances that you wouldn't necessarily notice on the first go, and and there a lot of that is some of that is scripted bits that you will either a bit of foreshadowing or a bit of kind of sleight of hand, but also I hopefully it's also there's enough ambiguity maybe thematically in the film where you might watch the movie on the first go and think that the ending, for instance, is quite bleak, or you might, as some people believe, and so I lean this way, feeling sometimes that the ending is in some ways hopeful.
I love what you're talking about, breathing room for people to interpret it, and the characters going in, we have biases as an audience, and we're constantly being challenged our biases.
Well, that's happening to them. That's the whole movie, right?
But also us, we're going like we come in going like what if we're working class, we're going to side.
That's right.
With Teddy.
That's right.
And then all of a sudden it's like, no, wait a second.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, and also if that's not maybe the cultural attitude that you come into the film with, you might think like, oh, I think he's one of those people that I've read about in the New York Times, a sort of, I think he's one of those like incel, toxic, lonely American males that I've been reading. One of those boogeymen, and he's not quite that, right? He's first of all, he's not incel. He's quite voluntarily cell. He puts the needle in himself.
But his anger is real.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
his
his
real
his despair
he's
is
got a very
real,
good
and
argument
that's
to make.
actually
That's
what's
right.
so heartbreaking.
Yeah, no, he's truly is a victim, and he truly has been abused, and someone who feels disempowered.
And forgotten.
Disempowered and forgotten, and feels that he has no control over his life, that he doesn't have a life, that he doesn't have a future, and that none of us really have a life or have a future. And, some people choose to say, let's burn it all down, or let's bring back fascism. And for him, he thinks, no, I need to save the planet. We need to find out who's responsible for this, and we need to negotiate some material existence for ourselves that is fair and equitable. And he's not that impulse. I think I agree. He's not entirely wrong about that. He's not right about everything, but he is right directionally about some things in the movie.
And the same thing can be said about Emma Stone's
That's
character. That at first she's just
That's right. This cold corporate seeming animal.
Corporate, but then we start seeing this human side
That
so cold.
That these are two people who believe that they're saving the planet.
And then you add Don. It's Don, right?
Don,
the third. That is. Am I right to say that he's like the audience?
Yeah, he is. I think of him as sort of some might say the heart and soul of the movie, but I think of him as sort of the emotional intelligence of the film. And this is another thing that I think is hopefully rewarded on the second viewing, is you will see all the points at which Don actually sort of sees what's happening before Teddy does, and also sees what Michelle is up to before Teddy does, and. He's quite astute. He just doesn't have that same tyranny of will that Teddy and Michelle does, so he's not to express himself. But he kind of sees it all. He sees the writing on the wall.
Your script, it's mathematical. You have 3 characters. You have 3 conversations. Was this all thought out?
Yeah, I mean, in a sense. I mean, some of that stuff, it's, in retrospect, it kind of looks more carefully plotted than it is. But I probably just operate from the standpoint of I have a pathological fear of boring the audience, and so so I just try to find, okay, what can I do on the next set piece that feels like, okay, we're not just getting the same, because this is a big danger when you have a movie that's so contained where you're mainly stuck in that room. How do you, literally or figuratively break down the walls of that room from scene to scene so it doesn't feel like we're getting the same scene over and over again?
That aspect of the basement in itself is phenomenal because it becomes like a lab. It adds to the
Yes.
claustrophobia.
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
feeling
You
that
feel the
it
walls
adds to the
closing in a way.
paranoia.
That's right, and a lot of that is due to the fact that usually when you would make a movie like this, what you would do is you'd probably find a house for the exteriors, and maybe for a few rooms, but then that basement, for instance, you would do a build. You would find a studio lot, or you'd build it and film there. And for this, I say we, I didn't pick up a shovel myself, but they found a field in England, actually, as American as the film is, it's outside Henley-on-Thames, which is like a very posh, very English market town, is where we filmed it. And they just found a field, and they dug up a hole, and they built a whole working house with electricity and plumbing and everything, and they built that basement. And they built it enough so it could accommodate that big VistaVision camera getting in and out. And I think that, in a way, that the house became a character in the film. And I think if we had done it in a more practical way, where we'd done it in a studio lot, it wouldn't have felt as real.
But you, writing-wise, you understood the fact that this basement became.
Yeah.
You were enclosing them, and at the same time, it created a universality.
That's right. Yeah, and a lot of that is helped by, I mentioned the VistaVision camera, but usually think Vista, right? Usually a VistaVision camera is used for these, these big kind of widescreen vistas, and here we're using it in this very difficult but quite beautiful camera, and this tight, enclosed, dark basement space, and I think Yorgos's theory was the faces become the vistas, right? And so we have these wonderful close-ups and these battles between the two characters, where we're Emma's face and Jesse's face and Aiden's face are just these are the grandeur of those spaces, and that the camera is treating those faces like these emotional landscapes, and it's quite. I don't think it would be the same movie without that camera.
This film is quote unquote loosely based on a film that nobody has seen. I actually did see in 2003, Save the Green Planet from
Korean
Korea.
film. Yeah.
But I actually find that that you were adapting Philip Kaufman's the Body Snatchers.
Yeah, it's one of my
film.
favorite movies. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
it shows because a lot of the beats,
Yeah.
you're not recreating the same dialogue
No,
and the
no.
same scenes, but the beats.
Yeah, the vibe and tone of that movie, Body Snatchers is itself a remake, and Philip Kaufman's Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but it's the same premise and some of the kind of the same story beats, but yeah, I was inspired by the way he took that, and he found something in kind of 1970s San Francisco that culturally, the attitudes in that, he had something to say about the moment and time, and the dialogue felt, very much W.D. Richter's script, very much of its moment, and kind of funny, but quite dark and acidic as well. And yeah, that definitely a big influence.
This is the man that wrote one of my favorite movies, The Menu. Have you guys seen The Menu?
Thank you.
He wrote Succession. You know your movies, and that's actually what I love about watching your film. And the ending reminded me of Nashville.
Yep.
Robert Altman.
Yeah,
that
that's
at
exactly
the end
right.
we realized, like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And then, what other movie reminded me of? Planet of the Apes, the Charlton Heston. That at
right.
the end
Great
we
ending.
realized, like, whoa.
Yeah, I like that feeling where the kind of the scope of the movie seems to widen in some way thematically in the last couple minutes. Yeah.
So did you always thought that, like, the ending, I want to go from micro to like.
Yeah, it was always that. Yeah, and I always had that kind of tableau of those kind of shots of dead people and very banal kind of, because the cliche way to do that kind of ending is of all around the world is you see dead people in front of the Sphinx and the Eiffel Tower or whatever. But I like the idea that it's, at a discotheque and a bridal shower and, those kinds of things. People do, in a kitchen and on the side of a kind of a crummy highway. That seemed more interesting to me, and but that was always there from the beginning, and it was somewhat of a big swing, you know, and the kind of swing actually where I worried slightly that you get to the edit and be like, boy, I wish we had a smaller swing. That's like, maybe we should have made it that, you know, she was a CEO all along and not an alien. But,
And when the film showed at Telluride, a lot of people are going, what a bummer of an ending. I thought there was actually hopeful.
yeah, I mean, I've always felt that way. To me, a bleak ending of a movie is when a movie that purports to show the world as it really is, and the ending says, well, that's the world, and there's nothing we can do about it. Good night, folks. And for me, this ending is, in a more abstract way, is sort of, you know, that hasn't happened. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm fairly certain that's not going to happen. And so it allows, you know, a conversation of like, okay, well, what do we want to happen? Well, how do we want to relate to each other? How do we want to relate to the planet that we live on? And yeah, to me, that encourages a sort of hopefully productive conversation of some kind.
Well, there's, besides what you just mentioned, there's thoughts about corporate greed, the exploitation of the working class. Were you aware of all the different, I mean, I'm pretty sure you were aware of all these different themes, but juggling all the different themes.
Yeah, I wanted, especially from the outset, I wanted to make him, I wanted to approach him with a lot of empathy, especially maybe because it is a movie about a guy who believes in a conspiracy theory, and we now live in a culture where conspiracy theories have been somewhat mainstreamed or even, I think, co-opted quite cynically by our current government. And so I wanted to make sure that I wasn't, making a caricature of one of those guys that we read about. I didn't want to make him crazy or stupid or right-wing or politically or culturally anything. I wanted to make him himself and to have he created his own story, his own reality, because the story he was being told wasn't compelling. And so, I wanted to approach him that way because, as I said earlier, I think he's been legitimately abused by the system, big tech, big pharma, capitalism generally, the police, federal government, local government. And so, I wanted to honor him in that way.
You challenge our perspective because at first we will say, okay, let's sympathize with this character.
Yeah.
And then our beliefs are constantly turned upside down.
Yeah, because he does terrible things, and
the same way. It's just, I'm glad you brought that up because it's like, who's the villain? And we're constantly being. It's like a seesaw.
Yeah.
Okay, she's the villain. No, he's the villain, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
You know, tell us about that.
Yeah.
aspect.
Well, I like that idea of getting these people from opposite extreme ends of a cultural divide in the same room and giving them both kind of a good argument and also flawed arguments. And so, what they're doing over the course of the movie is, you know, so much of our lives nowadays are spent kind of imagining this person on the other end of that divide, or even arguing with them virtually online and thinking, well, everything is their fault and they're, you know, evil. And then what if you get these people in the same room and let them have it out a bit? And what happens is because they're both smart, I think, they both kind of reveal the other person's emotional biases and agendas that are underlying this very carefully crafted position and identity they have. This is what I believe, and this is why I'm right, and this is why you're wrong. And that all gets a little bit, you know, dismantled over the course of the film.
How hard was it to write Emma Stone's character where I was just blown away that there is, having seen it a second time, where there's moments she lies and there's moments she tells truth.
Yeah.
And the back and forth, tell us about navigating.
Yeah, I mean, part of that just begins with, even if you take the alien stuff aside, I think there's a lot of that double speak amongst people and that kind of world that her character is in. And part of that comes from maybe working on Succession for a long time. That kind of corporate speak and the kind of corporate optics were something that I knew how to write a bit. But unlike Succession, her corporate optics are a little bit different, right? Because she has this sort of progressive thing where, you know, she's got her photo of her with Michelle Obama in the office, and she has this idea of herself as being a kind of maybe even progressive figure. Leave at 5:30. And that she has a way of weaponizing that. felt really interesting to me. But he's quite prepared for that as well. And then, over the course of the movie, once we get a sense of who she really is, there are little tells there where she says to him at one point, I think at the dinner scene, I've become the kind of human being I never wanted to become. And once we know at the end of the movie that she's not a human being, we can read from that, meaning she became, by living on Earth and kind of immersing herself in amongst us, she kind of became the worst parts of us.
Correct.
So, yeah.
How much did you wrote the script, and then Yorgos and Emma joined after that? How much did the script shift? Your vision shifted after they came.
I mean, not a whole hell of a lot. It was a quite lovely, and I don't want to say easy, but somewhat frictionless experience where the script was basically written and then hung around for a year while kind of the movie industry came back from COVID and many other things happened, and I was still working on Succession, so it kind of was just there somewhere on the back burner. And then Yorgos came on probably about a year and a half after I wrote the script. So it wasn't really written for him or obviously for Emma or Jesse. So it kind of just, and it was kind of one of the first times Yorgos has said that usually he's there from kind of the ground floor of a script with the writer developing it and going through many drafts and shaping the story and the structure. And this, was more of a situation where the script was, he told me at the time it was more or less shootable, and he just had a few quite clear and actionable notes and a little laundry list of move this scene here and do that. And basically things to make it somewhat more shootable in his style, but not really changing the dialogue or the scenes or the themes at all, but small things. And it was great because sometimes as a writer you have this process where you'll work with a director and it's a little, if they didn't write it and they really want to make it theirs to create a sense of authorship, they have to turn your script into a puzzle and say, what is this? What is this movie? What is this script really about? And you have to sit there as a writer and think, well, I know what it's about. It's not a puzzle to me, And Yorgos just doesn't do any of that, He just he's quite straightforward. He doesn't want to get into a whole, what does it all mean, bullshit script session that goes on for months. And he just is like, no, I know what it is. I know how to shoot it, but do these things to make it even more shootable for me. And I did them. And it was great. All his notes were so good.
Did you ever imagine Emma Stone in the role?
No, I mean, when I originally wrote the script long before Yorgos came on, and in fact, in the script, I'd written that Michelle was maybe more like in her mid-50s, early 60s. I was thinking I tried to think of prominent American woman CEOs. So I was thinking of someone like Mary Barra, who's the CEO of General Motors, who's a little bit older than Emma, and then of course when Yorgos signed on, I had a pretty good idea who he had in mind for his female lead, and so, but at that point I thought I would have to then go into the script and do a kind of a whole Emma pass, and I didn't get any notes from Yorgos and Emma for things to make it more for her. That didn't ever come through, and I also realized that, well, actually this kind of biotech, kind of biomed, ag kind of thing, CEO, a lot of those people tend to be, quite a bit younger, right?
Yeah,
if you think of your Elizabeth Holmeses and so forth. So I thought actually this is kind of, I don't really have, in fact, this is even more believable that she would be, in her 30s.
From your vantage point, what is it about? It's one of the most incredible partnerships, Yorgos and Emma Stone.
Yeah.
From your vantage point, what is it? What is the chemistry? What makes it tick? Emma and Yorgos.
I think she likes to work on a high wire, and she likes really high stakes. When you tell her oh, we have to shave your head in one take in the back of a car driving down a freeway, she gets really excited by that kind of thing. And I think some other actors would be like, okay, how do we fudge this, or how do we fake it a bit? And she just gets really into that, because and part of the reason, that's naturally how she is, and then she feels even more comfortable with that because she feels she feels safe with Yorgos and his tone and his style, and what I saw as a writer being on set watching it, you see the tremendous advantage of. You see why an actor wants to work with the same director a lot, or why this director wants to work with the same actor a lot, because it just saves an incredible amount of time. Like there's a shorthand there where after a take that didn't quite work, rather than like, or everyone take 5 and let's get into like what's not working and how do I phrase this note gently to the actor so they're not going to be offended and or vice versa. There's none of that shit. It's just they will look at each other and kind of go like, or make a noise or make a face, and they both know what it means. And then they do the next take perfectly because he knows what she wants and she knows what he wants.
Correct. And there's a matter of trust also.
That's right.
I mean,
and
because
that extends to the whole, most of the cast and crew, because, it's Jesse's second time working with the Yorgos. And then the crew, they're like a surrogate family, a traveling circus. They've worked together on all these movies, Poor Things and Kinds of Kindness and The Favorite over and over and over again. So they all just know how to work, and that is very much intentional on Yorgos' part. He just wanted that. He just wants that familiarity between people. So I was sort of the new guy, but it was great kind of being the new guy. I loved joining the circus, It was really great.
You mentioned to me that you wrote this in Brooklyn during COVID, and I couldn't help but feel, knowing that like the film, there's a sense of paranoia and claustrophobia.
Yeah, for sure.
Did COVID?
Yeah, and I think I'm probably prone to those kind of feelings to begin with.
Paranoia and claustrophobia?
Oh, yes. Elevators.
No,
big
we
problem
all
for me.
hate
Yes.
you.
Yeah, I know that. So yeah, no,
We're teasing. I'm teasing you.
I know. I think when I first started, when I first kind of got attached to the movie and was talked to Ari Aster, who produced the film, about it, and I kind of outlined it. It was sort of winter 2019. And then when I actually had a window to write it, it happened to be like April, May 2020, which was first wave full lockdown of COVID in New York, which was really locked down. And hence I think that is why I wrote it quite quickly, because I had nothing else to do. And I wrote about 3 weeks, which for me is very, very fast. And I don't think I would have written it as quickly or probably as recklessly had it not been for COVID, because I not only had a lot of time, but I also felt like maybe might not even be a movie industry. Like when this is all done, like, well, I did not have high hopes for the movie. There was no Yorgos attached to it. There was no Emma Stone attached to it. It was just like I was just writing this thing because Ari said, "Hey, check out this Korean movie. Maybe you should do a remake." Mm-hmm. And so, but I do think atmospherically, I don't think I would have written the same script had it not been written in that very isolated, very confused time when I literally had COVID, and so it was kind of written in this sort of fever, and I do think it found its way into, atmospherically at least, into the movie.
You work for the audience who don't know, you work for The Onion, and The Onion is an amazing publication in the sense that it captured the zeitgeist, but it was able to handle things with humor.
Yeah.
How much did that experience influence the script?
Yeah, I think it's probably influenced everything I've done, where The Onion essentially takes very extreme, heightened or hyperreal or absurd situations, but then writes them or presents them in a quite plays it straight. Right, it's in that. It's
Which
in
is
that
the
very
key to this film.
Yeah, it's in that
It's
very
all
straight
plays-
editorial voice. It's not kind of, it has a kind of strange realism to it, even though the situation's crazy. And that's sort of I guess, found its way into a lot of things that I've only noticed that recently. Like, oh, I guess I'm still kind of writing Onion stories in a way. Yeah.
Yeah. It's remarkable. You're delightful. You're a joy.
This is great. Thank
I've
you.
been a big fan. The Menu, Succession, and even I read your writing in the Onion. So.
Oh, thank you very much.
Well, thank you for braving the weather
Please,
to come
I'm
to
happy
us.
to. Thank you,
Yeah.
guys. Sorry.
Thank you so.
I'm sorry I'm not Emma Stone as well.
No, you made my day. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
guys.
everybody.
Thanks for coming out.